Hey, everybody. We have with us once again Ron James, the Media Relations Director of MUFON, to talk about the newly released report, this time by NASA, about UAPs, as they're calling them now, formerly known as UFOs. And apparently, Ron, they concluded that although there are a number of sightings that cannot be explained, there's no possibility that it is ETs, correct?
Well, that's what I understand they're saying, but what we're dealing with here is the same situation that we've been dealing with since they first started talking about this in government in 2017. It's another acronym agency investigative body that's been formed, given very limited information, and then they're supposed to produce reports, but it's garbage in, garbage out. So you've got a team of very esteemed people that are really not being told anything of significance. And so whatever conclusions they come to are based on what they're given, and they're not being given anything.
In fact, there does seem to be a public relations aspect to this. They've said that they want to take it from sensationalism to science with a closer,
Right.
accurate, professional look. So that in itself is kind of controlling information, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that they can scientifically investigate anything they want. They can investigate a blade of grass and conclude that it's not a UFO, but but people are not giving them access to the real material and the real information and the real specimens that we know exist. And the idea that they can continue to deny this stuff. I'm coming from a position personally that basically everything David Grush said to Congress is pretty much true. And
That was a recent whistleblower.
yeah, and as you know from my movie Accidental Truth, we unveil a lot of this story about how there's been a cover up of recovered materials, technology, and possibly living specimens, and that's been covered up for nearly 100 years. So when NASA pops up, and let's not forget, NASA has been notoriously accused of, and I believe the case has been proven, of airbrushing stuff out of photographs, hiding evidence. So it's not like we can really trust these guys in the first place. But that put aside, the information that this group is being given is not the real information. So what conclusion could you expect them to come to, except the one that they're coming to? But it's not based on facts.
So you see this more as a another move to contain all the outcry over the government hiding information. It's not a step forward.
Yeah.
It's actually
Look, everything that is being done, by government officially inside the UFO space is all based on compartmentalization, and they're able to. That gives them this plausible deniability, and this is just another example. When you saw that very first hearing on UFOs, and you saw Bray and Moultrie testifying, they were able to say things like, well, that information is not within the purvey at this unit. And basically, when you compartmentalize stuff and only give the people in those compartments limited information, they're able to deny things that weren't provided to them. So when you tell Moultrie and Bray get up there and say they know nothing about the nuclear incidents at Maelstrom, the fated giant, the missiles going down, and they're able to say, oh yeah, well, that information is not in my purvey inside the task force. It's just giving these guys excuses to not have to take accountability. So now you've got another box with another acronym, blah 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 blah, a bunch of letters together that stand for something. It's about the seventh one that they've put out, and you've got a very esteemed panel. It makes it look really great. But the problem is, you can have the most esteemed panel on the planet, but if you don't give them any information, you're giving them stuff that, of course, they're going to come to that conclusion. But we know that there's other information and there's other actual physical specimens out there, and they're not going to get their hands on that stuff.
so you don't see this as others might, that this is another step towards eventual disclosure. You see this
If it is, it's a lame step. And truthfully, again, like we point out in the movie, the people that are in control of this information will do everything they can to keep it from the public for as long as they can. And I think the only reason we're seeing anything that resembles some sort of disclosure is because we're reaching a point where you're no longer going to be able to cover it up. It's going to become so obvious, or there's going to be some kind of an event that is unavoidable. And so, yeah, there's a plan to prep humanity for the eventual disclosure of non-human intelligence interacting with the human race, but they're doing it on their terms. And one of the biggest things that they're trying to do is make sure that they don't have to take accountability for the lies and the secrecy and the cover-ups that have happened for the last 100 years or more. So that's that they're walking a tightrope, and we're seeing it play out. And even though you could say, well, it's a step towards disclosure that we had this stuff, it's not a step toward the whole truth. And there's a lot of us that aren't going to be satisfied until we get that. And we also realize that we may never get it. But are we being conditioned to accept non-human intelligence as part of the fabric of the universe? Sure. But are we being told the truth about it all? No, not right now, not by a long shot.
But you think that there is a plan underway for eventual full disclosure?
Well, again, it depends on what you mean by full disclosure. I believe that they are never going to come forward and tell the truth about how the cover-up was initiated, the actual events that happened, the history of these events. Are we ever going to see the photos from the Roswell crash? Are we ever going to see these craft that they keep talking about? Probably not. If we do, it's going to be some kind of, oh, look what we just found. And they're escaping culpability for 100 years of deception, and probably illegal deception. So if you mean disclosure like, hey, there's probably aliens. Oh, okay, there is aliens, or there's other life forms that exist here in the earth or in another dimension. Yeah, we'll have that sooner or later. But will we ever get the truth, the full disclosure of the whole story? Probably not. So I believe there is an orchestrated path towards some kind of disclosure. I think it started in earnest in 2017 when Elizondo came forward. I believe that was all planned and orchestrated. The way the To the Stars Academy unfolded right after he tendered his resignation, that didn't happen spontaneously. This was planned for months, if not years. So yes, there is an organized path towards disclosure, but it's not an organized path towards the whole truth.
You know, their basic statement is a contradiction in itself. They say, well, we can't identify what these anomalies are, they cannot be extraterrestrial. So, I mean, how could they eliminate that possibility if they can't identify them?
I think their wording was a little more clever, wasn't it? It says that there's no solid evidence that they're extraterrestrial. They didn't rule it out completely, did they?
Yeah, he didn't rule it out entirely, but it sounded highly improbable the way he put it. You know, I mean,
yeah. Look, here's the problem that I have, and I'm just when I started making Accidental Truth, I was really angry at every time I uncovered another layer of this deception and another piece of the onion, another layer. I would literally get a little bit upset, and I can't count the times that I was sitting at my computer editing this movie, just shaking my head at the blatant falsehoods coming out of these people's mouth. And then I got over it, and I was kind of like, well, you know, maybe it's okay that that they're keeping it a secret. Maybe there's a reason for it that we're not even aware of, and maybe it's a good reason. So I tried to start giving some of these people the benefit of the doubt. But lately, I'm just getting angry again. And I can't say this obviously in my position with MUFON, but as a human being who's doing the best I can to uncover and deliver this information to the public, it's just frustrating as it can get. And these people are just blatantly getting more and more difficult to stomach.
well, you know, an obvious question for many people would be that if we do not know what they are, and if we cannot rule out aliens behind us, does it pose a threat to the Earth and to us?
Well, you know, there's the argument that if they were a threat, they would have materialized already. A lot of people think that the threat narrative is setting the stage for nefarious human activity. I don't really have a position on false flags or Project Bluebeam or any of those things. I think it's highly unlikely. But I think that, humanity's problem is that everything's a threat. Our neighbors are a threat. Our friends are a threat. This country next to us is a threat. And we're constantly at war with something or someone. And the idea that a species with advanced technology may be part of some galactic civilization is going to allow us a seat at that table until we get our act together on planet Earth. That's not going to happen. So the biggest threat to humanity is not going to come from extraterrestrials. It's us. We're our own worst enemy. And we need to clean that up. What's happening in Ukraine is like, hasn't human civilization advanced to the point where we're past that kind of absolute destruction and killing? And if we haven't, that's really scary. It's an eye opener for all of us.
Well, that calls to mind some of the early theories about how UFOs first started appearing, apparently after we exploded the bomb. In other words, the aliens were concerned about either us destroying ourselves or spreading destructive technology and aggressiveness outside of the bounds of Earth.
Well, there is that the so-called beginning of the modern UFO era, but the unidentified flying objects and things in the sky and interaction with non-human intelligence has been part of all of recorded history. It didn't just start. Now, did we attract some more attention or create a need for more scrutiny? Possibly, and probably actually. But this has been going on so as long as we've been going on. And there's a lot of support lately for the idea that there's a whole other intelligent species that's living inside the planet. And that actually makes sense too. And they probably, if that's true, they probably have extraterrestrial connections. The surface of a planet in galactic time is not a safe place to be. Earth has been destroyed by asteroids more than once in the history of the planet. We don't know what civilizations have been here because it doesn't take that long on a galactic scale for all traces of, even us right now. If we were gone in 1 million years, in 2 million years, virtually every trace of our existence would be gone. And so we don't know the history of the planet. We don't know who's here. But if you want to survive for millions and millions of years on planet Earth, you're going to have to go underground. And so, a lot of people think that that's a possibility as well.
Ron, part of the problem with the continued skepticism among at least a portion of the public, even though more and more people are believing that there are aliens and we're being visited, but the skepticism is fueled by these continuing reports that seem completely unestablished scientifically or actually ludicrous, such as the recent display of alleged alien bodies in Mexico. What do you make of that?
Yeah. So, I have a lot of respect for some of the work that Jaime Maussan has done, but there's also been some things that are a little bit questionable, and this whole mummy thing is one of them. Those specimens appeared in 2017, look like plaster casts, but there's plenty of them. It's not like they just have one and they can't test it. They have plenty of specimens to test. They have plenty of ways to test it, and it just hasn't been done. If these things are legit, then why haven't samples been sent to every major university in the United States and Mexico and returned a consensus set of results? So just the absence of that and the fact that they've had 5 years to really get something conclusive done really makes me very suspicious. And I never really bought into these things. When Gaia went down there and made a big thing about it, it just seemed like a bunch of hype to me. So if they're legit, then it's time to prove it. And if they're not, then it's time to prove that too. But parading these things in front of political bodies when there's still no conclusive evidence that there's anything legitimate about them makes no sense at all. And you're right, it muddies the waters. It muddies the waters a lot.
Despite such reports that do muddy the waters, your overall conclusion, belief, conviction is what?
That the there is absolutely one or more non-human intelligence species engaging the human race, engaging our planet, and that government has known about it for a very long time. I believe that the Vatican is sitting on a huge archive of records going back even further. And that the idea that there's no life in outer space is ludicrous. Whether or not these are coming from outer space or whatever, I personally think that there are probably a variety of different types of life forms, some of which we don't even understand, that are at work here. But yeah, those two things absolutely conclusively I would sign off on: engagement by a non-human intelligence, or one or more, probably more, and the fact that there's human beings that know a lot more than they're telling us. Those two things I would absolutely stake my reputation on. Now, when you start getting into the fine-tooth comb of it all, that's when things kind of splinter, even within the UFO community. So I try not to venture beyond the facts.
And of course, the natural follow-up to what you just said, what you concluded is, are they benevolent or are they malevolent?
Well, see, then we get into speculation. And there's a lot of speculation out there. I personally kind of support the idea that there is some sort of interspecies galactic federation, family, whatever, that, and that Earth has kind of been left to self-determine, kind of like the prime directive out of Star Trek, and that it's up to us. And if we're able to evolve beyond our own penchant for self-destruction, we might get invited into just an amazing dream come true, and something right out of Star Trek. But if we don't, nobody's going to be there. There's probably a mop-up team that knows how to clean up a planet that's self-destructed, and they'll come in and it'll we won't be here anymore. So it's up to us again.
We talked in the past about one of our next topics of discussion, which I'll promote now for those listening in, about the possibility of ancient intelligent life not so far away on the planet, right, on Mars.
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence that Mars has a history that we don't understand yet. One of the things that really sticks out is Dr. John Brandenburg, who has identified the existence of radioactive isotopes in Mars's atmosphere. These particular isotopes only come from two things that we know of. One would be a nuclear explosion. The other is a supernova. And so the fact that these isotopes exist within the Martian atmosphere, but they don't exist everywhere else in the solar system, indicates that they didn't come from a supernova. So the only remaining source of these would be some sort of nuclear event on Mars. And that has not been debunked by anybody. Nobody has been able to say that. I said, this guy's there's no scientific evidence to the contrary to explain the presence of these isotopes in the atmosphere. And there's all kinds of suspicious pictures of things on Mars that are very inconclusive. So you can't say for sure, oh, that's a pyramid or that's a face. None of that stuff has been proven yet. But the existence of these particular radioactive isotopes that seem to have no other explanation indicate that Mars might have been through some sort of event that was created by artificial means.
So in other words, the intelligent beings on Mars, the civilization, might have wiped itself out, as people say we will eventually do, because of the bomb.
John's take on it is that it wasn't a super advanced civilization. It was more like, the Mayas or the ancient Egyptians as far as their technological advancement. And he seems to think that it was another interplanetary species with higher technology that did it. That again, it's in the gray box, so you can't say yay or nay. But what we can say definitively is that these isotopes are existing in the Martian atmosphere, and they only come from one source that we know of. This is definitive.
Well, that sounds more like a Martian attack, a War of the Worlds.
Attack on Mars, yeah.
The Earth is attacked next, So That's a whole other topic, and we'll be
It really is. Yeah, and again, back to NASA and Viking. The guy that designed these tests, there were 3 different tests to test the Martian soil. Viking landed on Mars and did these tests. And the actual scientist, his name's Gill, I can't remember his last name right now, but the actual scientist that designed these tests is on the record in protest. And what happened was when Viking landed on Mars, 2 of the tests came back positive for signs of life, previous life, organic materials, whatever they were testing for, and one of them was inconclusive. Well, by the definition of this test, before Viking was launched, this would have been proof of life existing on Mars. Well, they convened in a little room and changed the parameters of the test so they could come out and say, oh, this is all inconclusive or negative. That happened. It's not like, and like I said, the guy that designed the test is still out there trying to fight the results. So, we can't trust NASA. I think that they already found life on Mars. I think NASA already knows that there's past or present life on Mars. And sooner or later, Webb telescope's going to hit a planet, and and there's going to be lights on it.
And will they disclose that?
It depends on where we're at. But if they stick to their same patterns, probably not.
All right, this is a very great material for our next discussion, which will be soon.
One more thing on NASA. People have this idea that, okay, well, NASA's up there, the Webb telescope is up there taking pictures of stuff, and it goes to NASA and they put it out to us, but that's totally untrue. The images from satellites, from cameras, all the data, even stuff coming from the space shuttle, this all goes through private contractors and filters and pipelines before it even gets into JPL at NASA. And so you got just, front-facing working people at JPL looking at stuff coming in from Mars. They're not getting it directly from Mars. It's going through several places before even the people that we think are doing the analysis even see it. So there's a bunch of different methods in place that facilitate withholding information.
Well, that brings to mind another question. With the advancement of space technology by other nations, even India now landing on the moon, how long could the U.S. contain the information that it wants to be kept secret without another nation spilling it? And a follow-up question to that is, has there been an agreement all these years, if these other nations do have information on UFOs, that there's a compact for everyone to keep it quiet?
I think that that's likely. Obviously we can't absolutely prove it, but the people think that the U.S. is the one containing all this information. That wouldn't work. So I think that there probably is an international agreement that transcends all the cultural and philosophical differences of governments and people. And that's been in place. Just like, we can still put Soviets and U.S. people together on the space station, and that kind of goes on despite what's happening on the headlines. And it's a reasonable to postulate that there's probably some kind of international agreement. The group that monitors this, the people that respond to crashes, the people that cover it up locally and everywhere else, is operating internationally, and it has to be, because there's no other explanation.
To be continued. Ron James, the Media Relations Director of MUFON. Thanks once again for a very interesting interview.
The views and opinions in this interview do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of MUFON. I've gone out on a limb a couple times here, but yeah.
All right, Ron. See you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot. I'm here for you anytime.